I was born Arnold Bernard Stone, June 30th, 1933, in the Bronx.
Oh, Johnny, how you can love.
1933 was right at the heat of the Depression. Families kind of lived together. So all my uncles and aunts and whatever relatives I had really lived within a 5-block radius.
Oh, Johnny, please tell me, dear.
My mother's name was Bertha. Her maiden name was Suskin. And her parents, my grandmother and grandfather, which was Sam and Yetta Suskin, came over from Russia, I think prior to the Russian Revolution or somewhere around 1917. During the Depression, there was a lot of poverty, there was a lot of unemployment, and there was a lot of illness. And I think at that time, that's where my mother developed tuberculosis, and my father somehow split or disappeared. We were put into an orphanage somewhere around 1939. It's kind of unusual for coming from a Jewish family to be separated like that and to put into orphanages at that age. Those were primarily Jewish orphanages. And then I was also raised in a Catholic orphanage with nuns and etc. I think I was at that point introduced to my brother. I don't remember having a brother, other than maybe when I was about 10 years old, we ended up in the same place. I think in those days during World War II especially, they didn't care whether you were, what your religious background was. If there was an empty bed, you went to that place, and that's the way it was. I was in one place and I ran away with a few kids, and one hopped the train and got killed. I remember that. I remember one incident in an orphanage where somebody threw a knife at my brother, and I chased him, and he jumped actually 2 flights of stairs. I would sneak out at night, and I would collect the pennies. I got candy for everybody. I was the one that snuck out. I went to the local candy store, bought the candy, and then distributed it under the beds at night. You know, you got to keep in mind of a young kid, you know, there's no hugs, there's no one helping you with your homework, there's no parental guidance, like how do you tie your shoes and how you do all of this. You kind of like figure it out for yourself. I think as an adult, probably the best experience I ever had was the orphanage, and I draw on it because you learn how to survive very early as an individual. You know, maybe as a child, if you're traumatized, you don't remember the bad. I got out when I was just about 13 years old. My grandmother got us out, and my grandfather, as far as I was told, died a week or 2 before we got out. So in effect, we came home to a funeral. We came out, we lived on 1438 Morris Avenue in the Bronx. We lived in a very, very tiny apartment. I lived on the couch. My brother slept on the floor. Eventually, my mother got out of the hospital and ended up with marrying my stepfather, whose name was Nat Kelman. Nat was not a bad guy, except when he drank. He was nasty. He would gamble everything away and would steal everything. And in effect, lived under fear that people were going to come to kill him. So in order for us to have money, we used to have bookies in the house. We rented out the apartments on a daily basis. We had bookies coming in, probably the bookies that he owed money to. What I did is I left the house. I lived in the street. I lived with my friends. I basically lived on the corner or down in the pool room. My brother kind of went down into the basement, which in those days was had coal down there, and he started to weightlift. And that was his escape. We were on home relief. I remember resenting that. I got a job from my friend Rudy Mulho. I took over his route for the grocery store. And then at night, I set pins down in the bowling alley. So with those two things, we had enough money. I really paid the rent and got the food for the house. In effect, I really never went to school past 15. Well, I had, developed a group of friends that I'm still friends with, the ones that are still alive. Your whole life took place within 4 blocks of the neighborhood. There's a lot of drugs in my neighborhood. I had 3 of my friends die of heroin overdoses as a teenager. When we had a club room, that club room was our lifeline, because you would, if you had a date, you had a girl, you had a place to go. We did gambling there, we slept there. We also had one car. We all chipped in to have a car. We had one of those black Buicks with a running board where they could pull down the shades. We had a football team. We had a sandlot football team, which was a good team. And none of us went to school, but we would scrimmage against high schools. We scrimmaged against the college. We would do pretty good. I never heard of anybody going to college. The most successful guy I knew was a cab driver in those days.